Welcome along to another episode of the DePIN Coffee Hour. I'm your host, Neil, and today I hope you'll gain some insights into the hottest projects in the decentralized infrastructure space while simultaneously consuming the ultimate chat of all tasty beverages, coffee. Or I guess you could have a cup of tea or something bougie like a vanilla turmeric latte, I guess, if you like as well. Quick reminder, if you're not already running a Havelo node, you probably should be. Havelo.com for the details, but on how you can get started. But with a 50 million token airdrop coming up soon, and a lot of ways that you can juice the drop for your wallet's pleasure, the sooner you get involved, the better. All right, moving on. I am very happy, delighted, in fact, to welcome to today's episode John from Beamble, Michael from DePIN Hub, and Marcos from Urt. I don't know if that's how you're supposed to pronounce it properly, Marcos.
It's all right. No, you said it right. You got it. You got it good.
Okay, good. So, guys, very excited about this episode, I have to say. I think you're all awesome in the space, very well-known people, and people that I had heard of before I found out you were coming on the show, so that's great. John, do you want to kick us off with the sort of backstory of yourself and how you got into Web3 and decentralization and what it means to you?
Yeah, so my background has two big themes in it. One is developer tools, technology. So I started a company called ePrize that built web development tools, took that company public on NASDAQ, grew it to 300 people. So I've been in that side of things, but then pursued my passion around game development as well. Started a game studio called Disruptor Beam, where we ship games to 20 million players based on things like Game of Thrones and Star Trek and Walking Dead. So really well-known global entertainment franchises. And while I was there, the Star Trek game, we also turned into a blockchain game. So I got exposed to that. And I was also an early Bitcoin miner. So I had been kind of a degen myself back in the day with all these different protocols as they started to emerge. So I was very familiar with the space. But that's kind of the backstory. About 5 years ago, decided that if I could smush those two experiences together, the development tools and the game development, I could have much greater impact in the world than shipping one game after another on my own. So created a company called Beamable. And Beamable is a software platform for developing the back end of games. So games today are live services, online products. They have millions of players, they have game servers, they have online functionality. All of that requires massive amounts of compute. These are large businesses at Azure, at Amazon, at GCP today. We saw an opportunity to really simplify that process. And we've been building that back-end development platform. So we got about 100 games that have launched on the platform at this point. In Web3, it includes some of the biggest out there, like Mythical Games, launched FIFA Rivals just a few weeks ago on the platform, but also a lot of Web2 games, which I think is interesting when we get into the DePIN part of this story. But that's the development platform. Where we're going now is we're taking that tech platform, the back-end game servers that we've created, and freeing it from the likes of Amazon and creating community ownership around the network of game servers. And that's going to launch this year. TGE is coming fairly imminently. We're doing the alpha node sale in only 2 weeks, actually, where we're rolling out sales of a pretty limited supply of our checker nodes. So a lot of things are coming in fast and furious here, but it's all organized around community ownership of the back-end infrastructure that's necessary to operate and scale games. The really cool part of it for us, but I think this is a story for DePIN as well, and what makes DePIN such a compelling category in crypto, is that while the supply side of most DePIN projects is for the very crypto native people, it's the node operators, it's getting tokenized rewards. The customer side doesn't need to be that way, right? So the customer side, the people who actually benefit from the DePIN services, they really don't have to know anything about crypto. In fact, they shouldn't, in my view. Like, it shouldn't be a requirement to understand crypto to benefit from the creation of these networks. And that's important for us because the gaming business today is 99.9% Web 2. It's a $230 billion a year industry where the vast majority of online game products remain Web 2. And that's really not going to change anytime soon, even though several Web 3 games may emerge at scale. We need to satisfy the existing industry as it is. And I think that's the piece that's missed from a lot of crypto projects generally, which is this constant, solution in search of the problem type thing that emerges in crypto. But DePIN isn't like that. DePIN, when properly structured, and DePIN projects that I think are starting to scale are all organized around an existing demand that's already out there in the market. For us, it's largely the Web 2 games that are going to be generating most of the traffic, and we have millions of users already playing the games on our network, mostly Web 2. Although, like I said, we have some really interesting Web 3 games that are growing fast. But that's really interesting for crypto, I think, because the ability to drive on-chain revenue and transactions and growth in a way that draws the traffic and the demand from these more traditional industries is the way for this category to break out. In fact, I think DePIN is the most important category that we now have in crypto, maybe right after stablecoins. Like stablecoins opened up this market in a big way. DePIN opens up the market again to all of these use cases that everybody in the world needs, essentially.
There's just a ton of stuff to double click on in there, and as a gamer, I'm sure we could just probably talk for hours and hours and hours. But to be fair to everybody, Michael, do you want to tell us a little bit about your backstory and what you're up to DePIN Hub?
Sure, thanks. Yes, and then I'm gonna grab the coffee that I have over there on the stove, because I saw this was coffee hour, so I thought I'd make it real and live up to it. But I'm gonna let it get hot over there. But yes, so I'm Michael, the head of growth at DePIN Hub, also known as Hotspotty. Hotspotty Inc. is the actual company, and that was our original brand. And then we spun up DePIN Hub about 2 years ago as the entire DePIN ecosystem really started taking off. So it's actually our second kind of product or service kind of under Hotspotty. So quickly about myself, I'm American, but based in Lisbon, Portugal. There's actually many Americans based here now. It's quite a popular destination to go, and it's also becoming kind of a real-life DePIN hub. There's actually numerous DePIN projects with parts of their teams here. Some of the peak guys are here. Borderless Capital's here some of the time. There's some other projects that have founders or core members here. So it's kind of a cool place to be. It's fairly crypto friendly. No doubt. Yeah, at least from a tax perspective. I don't know about anything else in the regulatory
when you work in this
framework.
space, it sure is.
Yeah. And a lot of like OG, more like DeFi guys, people from France and stuff that left there a few years ago, or that were back in like 2017, 2019. So interesting place to be. But I moved here around 2018, and it's funny because I see Marcus's company is called URT, but I had a company called URT, EURT. That's actually a on-demand. It was like Airbnb for luggage. It was a on-demand luggage storage thing, so you didn't have to carry around your bags when you were like too early to check into your Airbnb, or you had to check out early or whatever. Ran that for like a couple years. It didn't really work. I eventually shut it down. A whole bunch of learnings and issues there, but it was a good experience. Around that time, I got back into what I kind of used to do, which was more related to physical infrastructure management. So I used to work in physical security for many years, related to like cell sites and electricity distribution and other data centers and things like that, which got me working very closely with a lot of the executives there and seeing a lot of their issues on the ground, more physical actually, around like theft and uptime management and SLAs and all of these things. So I got kind of back into that for a Silicon Valley company where I ran their EMEA-based business development and sales. So we're doing a lot of like field service optimization, like workforce management, integrating with like BSS, OSS systems from telecom companies and ERPs. So it was really like getting me the centralized physical infrastructure deployment experience. And so that was one of the reasons that Hotspotty and me kind of came together. I was actually one of the first hosts of a Helium hotspot many years ago in Lisbon. And because I had this kind of background in deploying actual kind of cellular infrastructure, the two founders, Max and Daniel, we shared a lot of ideas. We nerded out a lot about like what could Helium become and what could our involvement be and how could it grow and could this turn into something bigger and what if other projects are doing the same thing. And eventually they were like, why don't you just join us? So I joined a few years ago, took over all the business development and everything kind of sales marketing community at Hotspotty. So at that time we were just a fleet management, or whatever you want to call it, hotspot management solution for Helium. So we quickly became the most popular software in that ecosystem, grew to about 300,000 users. People would use us to like simulate where to put their hotspots, manage their uptime, pay out their hosts, because they were often hosting these hotspots with other people. So we made it super seamless, like scan a QR code in 30 seconds, 150 hosts would get paid their commissions, whatever else, so you didn't have to do the calculations. But about 2+ years ago, we saw that there was a lot more than just Helium going on in this ecosystem. And it was getting really exciting with like decentralized GPUs were emerging and decentralized storage and stuff with like weather sensors and all kinds of other things and dash cams. And we were like, man, this is getting really cool. Why don't we take our learnings from being a deployer? We also helped build the map explorers for Helium. We ran the backup of their blockchain. We were very involved kind of end to end and sort of an early stage DePIN. So we thought, why don't we just take those learnings and the community we already have, and we can just, instead of just working closely with one project, we'll help sort of grow, promote, educate about all the cool projects in the space, and we'll help our community connect with new opportunities that they can also participate in beyond just Helium. So that was the kind of incubation of DePIN Hub. Now DePIN Hub has grown to arguably be the most popular, most well-known sort of source of information in DePIN. So we're like a data aggregator, a little bit like DeFi Llama, news company, education platform. So you can go there, discover all the new projects, figure out ways to get involved, buy hardware, see the token prices, connect with other people, etc. So that's what we do. And I will now pass the ball back to you, Neil.
Kind of like a hub, you might say.
Kind of like a hub.
For DePIN.
Now I'm going to get my coffee, so I'll be right back.
Okay, yeah. Get your coffee. Priorities, man. Come on. Marcos, lovely to chat to you.
Awesome.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your backstory and what you're up to at URT?
Okay. Sure. Let me just kind of talk a little bit about ORT and then kind of share my origin story in the wild space of crypto, blockchain, Web3, and I don't know, all these fancy terms, right? So I'm just, what do you say, the MENA lead for ORT. So ORT was a breakthrough project in Columbia University, started by Dr. Max Lee, and later became separate. So essentially, it's kind of like a decentralized AI ecosystem focusing on storage, data, and compute. So you could store your data with us. You could, collect the data, label the data, and then eventually, train the AI models with the high quality data sets and stuff. So, but our main focus has been mostly on data, because the idea is to, bring humanity in the loop, so they can get rewarded and play an important role. So that's, I would say, ORT in a nutshell. But also like to add that ORT is also one of the founding members for this alliance called Human AI X. So the idea is to, push the narrative of decentralized AI, not only just in the Web3 space, but also to enterprises as well. So we still have a long way to go, but it is actually a really good time to showcase that, Web3 has great solutions. DePIN has great solutions that can offer value to, the masses. So, and so Neil, so you asked about my origin story in the space. How I got into the space was actually, I was born and brought up here in Sunnyside, Dubai. I moved to the United States to pursue sort of like my American dream with, sports and stuff. And I learned about Bitcoin through some of my friends who were libertarians, who were into politics, actually. So I was learning about, economics and, textbook stuff, and kind of learned about how money is created. And from then on, went on this rabbit hole, a little bit of conspiracy theories here and there, but hey, there's some fun in that, right? So
it's hard not to.
But I guess, so I lived that American dream, and like any American dream, kind of fell apart, and I crash landed back to Sunnyside, Dubai, which is not a bad place to crash back to, So, but I guess so things kind of started to change pretty well here in Dubai. I think around like 2020, Dubai opened up. You start to see a lot of the crypto folks, Web3 folks, a lot of even some of the some developers too started to like move to Dubai. So as Dubai is one of the big hubs. I mean, you also seen like President Trump coming to the UAE, raise almost like what $2-3 trillion and like AI, deep tech stuff. So there's you do see a lot of Web3 events, a lot of forums, and also you start to see also John, he mentioned about like stable coins, and I believe you might have mentioned RWAs, but there has been some government driven efforts to drive those kind of initiative, try to like sort of having a how do you call, lack of a better word, like kind of like an arms race between Singapore on the east, then you got the United States on the west. So I don't know if it's London also getting involved, but
yeah, London.
so
I think it's Lisbon in Portugal and possibly.
yeah. So it might be. Yeah, right. Sorry, I forgot about
Portugal
too. So my apologies. But so better to see a lot of guys from Portugal. They'll come to Dubai like during like the winter time, which is actually a good strategy. Summer, super hot, super humid. So so here, I came back. Worked for did some sports stuff, then worked for American Express. Got tired of working with the financial services space, and then I just decided to in the meantime start my own little podcast. It was just a way to get a job into the Web3 space. So then I got an opportunity to connect with some libertarian friends of mine. They got me to with Bitcoin.com. So they had an exchange at that time. Then from then on, worked with a couple of crypto exchanges. Started a community called Coffee and Crypto with a focus on developers. And then a buddy of mine, Mike Robinson, who's the chairman of the ORT Foundation. So he told me about this project he's worked with ORT. They're focusing on decentralized AI, and they needed someone to cover the MENA region. So he asked me to join, and definitely see a lot of interesting opportunities for Web3, and especially with DePIN too. Like having like building edge networks. When it comes to storage and compute. And how kind of lay the foundation for regular people to play an important role in the AI space. So it doesn't have to be this big tech, big boys kind of deal. Even regular Joes and Janes, I mean, they can also play a role too. So I think, and I, because right now we're focusing on like high quality data, getting humanity in the loop and stuff. But I think John, I think I have to agree. Like I think there is an undercurrent when it comes to the DePIN side of things. I think there is a lot of opportunity, and from my observation, because I do marketing, but also handle business partnerships too, and I'm trying to talk to like government officials, some enterprise people, and they still have a long way to go in terms of Web3. But I think DePIN could play kind of like a midway point, where they can understand infrastructure, how it connects. But it's I don't know, if you're like come from telecommunications, you understand infrastructure, I think instinctively. So anyways, I think DePIN is an important segment that we all gotta talk about, and I definitely want to learn more. So as we expand ourselves. So Neil, please.
Yeah, there's it's funny, like this is such a recurring theme. I could tell you like 3 or 5 recurring themes from the, let's see, 60 people that I've talked to since we started this show, all from different projects. And one of the themes is like it's DePIN is a real world utility, maybe the first, or maybe if not the first, certainly in the low numbers of early utility for blockchain. But it's just, even DePIN in itself as a term is kind of, I kind of feel like it depends on who you talk to what that means, right? Because obviously for you guys in URT, it's about AI. For somebody else, it might be about just storage, or it might be about just, GPU compute for something. Or last week, we were talking to a guest about noise pollution, for example, the solar. There's just so many different kind of sub niches inside of DePIN, which is already to a lot of people quite niche. So it's a fascinating space. There's no question about that. I saw a toothbrush DePIN the other day, which as somebody who
Wait, a toothbrush?
Yeah, for sure.
Toothbrush?
Yeah, this is it. Yeah, it runs on your toothbrush.
Wow.
Like, I'm a bit of a tokenomics nerd, so I for fun will go to various AI tools and just drill them about the tokenomics of a particular idea and what's available, and deep research it and kind of dig into it and look at how how likely it is to be successful. I don't know. That's a tricky one. Like, you earn points for brushing your teeth. I don't know what the flywheel looks like in that particular scenario. But anyways, I'm not here to dump on toothbrush Eden DePIN. You will be mortified. Okay, thanks, Bob. Will do.
I think I know Eden. I think that's I actually had that idea, and I think it's actually a really good idea. I believe it's like a sex toy DePIN. So you essentially get you get tokens for
Yeah,
but, it's like female empowerment.
You get tokens for playing with yourself. Is that where you were going with that?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, I mean, what gets better than that? You get tokens.
Yeah, this is wild, man. Man, you're getting OnlyFans run for their money, man. Like,
yeah.
It's interesting. This reminds me of a few years back during COVID. They had all these thermometers they had these smart thermometers that were reporting data on people's temperature, and you could actually predict where COVID outbreaks were just about to occur, even though they didn't really know yet based on people's average temperatures. Wow. So, maybe that's more of a serious application of this idea that I'm just talking about.
Yeah, for sure. When you look at the data layers underneath as well, I think that's a common theme as well. Like, John, you had mentioned about data and inside of games and I wanted to actually double click on something about that in a second, but maybe we can come back to that, because I feel like data has been sort of the economy in Web 2, right? Like Facebook, all these big SaaS platforms that essentially we were all the products for, because they were gathering our data and then they were selling it or in some way using it to generate revenue. One of the things I think is fascinating is how AI can change that with large data sets, especially. So I wonder, maybe it's just a question for everybody, and I don't really mind who wants to answer it first, or if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But I'm just curious about what you guys think, how that relationship is going to change, basically, between Web 2 and now Web 3, or possibly some other web number that's about integrating, essentially taking large data sets, using AI to in some way help through decentralization, help kind of redistribute the wealth, or make it more profitable for every node or every user, rather than just the centralized player.
So this is where we think a big part of the role of vertically oriented, meaning industry vertically oriented DePIN is going to come in, because there's compute that can be treated horizontally, of course, but many applications are very domain specific in terms of their specific technical requirements, as well as the data language that they establish around how they get used. So the game industry is a good example of that. So the game industry is a $230 billion a year industry with tens of thousands of online game products that actually has not had any standardization around data language so far, meaning what is a item purchase? What is a user? How do you even represent a user? What is the history of purchases that an individual user makes? So that's just like one small universe related to the e-commerce aspect of games and the transactions of selling. And at scale, at very large publishers, they'll tend to have their own data language for a universe of games that they then do machine learning on to try to identify things like price points, regional price points, when to offer things for sale within their games. But you can actually do this across the entire industry. And that's where DePIN is going to have a whole range of additional opportunities. So I think DePIN, sort of starts at this hardware level where it's about provisioning and equipment, and in our case, just getting access to the compute that's required to actually be able to offer games for millions and millions of players. But then the value added layer that leans into the inherent composability of Web3 technologies generally, which includes standardized protocols for accessing the various resources, standardization in terms of the way you program and integrate back-end capability with the front end of your game, then includes things like standardization of data models. Once you have that, you can use the same data. The great thing about DePIN is you've got this inherent payment rails that are built into the protocol that you're offering. And one of the really untapped areas for DePIN that I think will be extremely high growth is then all those value-added services you add on top of the equipment level provisioning, such as data access, such as the ability for, in our case, a game studio to opt in to a form of private data sharing that you can then do model training on in aggregate across a lot of studios, and then reutilize that data model to make smarter decisions around your game.
What kind of decisions would that kind of enable in terms of making a smarter decision? Because I get the composability aspect of like things like NFTs that you could use in one game or another game, that you could transfer them and that somehow that they would make sense.
Keep in mind,
in different universes.
About all games. So that I come back to the thing about, so yes, sure, NFTs and Web3 games are a thing. Web3 is going to remain a relatively small part of the gaming business. So the DePIN that we're building at Beamable addresses Web 2, Web 3. So over half the revenue in the gaming industry today is derived from in-app purchases. And in-app purchases need to be price optimized. You need to identify when you offer these things. You need to figure out how to bundle items. You need to figure out cross-selling opportunities with other games. So this is just sort of one microcosm of the AI machine learning universe that is applied to the game industry. Just take one simple example, price optimization. What do you sell an in-app purchase for to maximize revenue in a game? That is a decision that games have to make, which is actually a very complicated and hard decision, which normally either has a product manager doing it manually, doing experimental testing and trying different things and converging towards price. Or if they're a more scaled out publisher, they'll typically spend like $500,000 to go and do a project where they label a whole bunch of data across different games and various user attributes that they're tracking to try to get at things like the price to sell an in-app purchase on. And this $500K gets spent over and over and over again in the industry, and it's because of a lack of common data language and standardization. So that's just one use case. But the big story, though, is using the payment rails that are built into DePIN that are used for equipment provisioning. I'm talking about compute networks, not necessarily all of the universe of DePIN that we can conceive of, but in just compute provisioning, then the ability to layer on top of it value-added services, which is exactly what Amazon and GCP and Azure, that's what all these guys do. They start with compute and then they build services on top of it. So DePIN has to do the same thing. DePIN, to actually be competitive with hyperscalers, will ultimately need to be not only a generalized compute layer, but a compute layer on which there's readily available third-party services through marketplaces and add-on components that share the same payment rails, but offer additional capabilities that are essentially off the shelf to developers. And that's what we've really been focusing a lot on at Beamable, going back to what we've called our marketplace. So we've invited third parties onto our platform to add plugin capability. And as we roll out the DePIN, what that will further extend to these third-party developers is the ability to do things like add recurring license fees or royalties on top of the compute layer that they then can collect, so that they get paid for offering software and components that are valuable to developers. building on top of the DePIN. ML,
Right.
in that case, being just one.
Yeah. I feel like there's a real chicken and egg kind of a situation for most of the, like for a lot of DePINs, because you're right, like they have to do all that, and then as well, they have to do the other thing that Azure and GCP and Amazon are very good at, which is attracting the right type of clients, which I think most people would agree is sort of enterprise level, for at least for a lot of compute, is the enterprise level type of clients, because they're going to have the steady budgets, and with that, there's a whole dog and pony show that goes with just being able to handle that kind of level of clientele. It could be completely different in the gaming industry, though, but I would imagine you'd still need to attract, for Beamable, I would imagine you'd still need to attract, game studios and like actual, rather than single entity or single game creators, studios that would create a bunch of games and they could plug into your platform. Is that fair to say, or?
Yeah, our development is geared towards finding studios and publishers. So individual developers discover things and they can import that knowledge with them from studio to studio. But there's thousands and thousands of studios out there that we're out there recruiting to our platform, and we make it easy by giving them an SDK. So in the world of game development, there's basically a front end and a back end. The front end is the graphics layer, like what you're touching when you play the game. And there are two companies that largely dominate the front end, which is, one is called Unity, which is a publicly traded company, and the other is called Unreal Engine, which is from Epic Games, that some people probably know best from a game called Fortnite, which has 100 million plus players on it. So that's the front end, but the back end really doesn't have that same level of standardization today. And part of it is because of all the siloing that happens across all these different hyperscalers and their proprietary APIs, where they try to lock you in, and no one's ever really built up an ecosystem. And that's kind of where we're trying to get, by making it easy so that you download an SDK, you don't have to know anything about blockchain, you don't have to know anything about servers or backend or anything. It's literally just an SDK that adds capabilities to Unity and Unreal Engine that I was just describing, so that if you're a game developer, you are now building a multiplayer game by adding that in. It's almost like, if you haven't been familiar with Roblox has an inherent multiplayer aspect to it. You just have to build within their proprietary environment, and it's a little more limited, but it has a ton of users and it gives you online capability right off the shelf. So we kind of add those Roblox-like capabilities to Unity or Unreal so that everybody can just start building them and really own your own game. And then from a game developer standpoint, you don't have to know anything about online. You just have to build a fun game. And that includes the blockchain integration. Like, we think that it's a huge impediment. Just generally speaking, anything that has required people to set up wallets and figure out how to transfer a currency into that wallet so that they can start buying services, it's a huge speed bump for the vast majority of end users. And end user, by this, I mean like studios, game publishers in our case. I think that would be true for any compute buyer, right? So it's important for there to be simplified SDKs for integration, and then simplified, essentially a fiat gateway where you pay for services without really having to know anything about blockchain. You can just swipe the credit card and you get access to compute, for example.
Just sort of changing tack for a second. Do you think we get to a place, John, where we have sort of game experiences or entertainment experiences where essentially it's live and it's being generated? Like, I start a game right now, you get a game, you download it, you install it, you play it. There's somebody has programmed the path that you take through the game most of the time, even in the open world style type of games, like Fortnite or some of the others, Fallout or whatever. Do you see a future where we get to a point, or is just the computational burden of it just so massive that we're just like still like miles away? But the question is, do we get to a world where you could fire up a game and essentially it's just an interface with an AI where the AI is essentially building the game world almost in real time based on in reaction to what you're doing based on a set of rules, or so that it's a very, very individualized experience. Do you see a future where we get to that?
Undoubtedly, we will have that. I mean, we're already getting close to that with the current abilities of generated video.
Right.
Games are a little bit more complicated in the sense that they are structured experiences. You can't just sort of generate it all on the fly. It can be generated, but it has to adhere to a very consistent set of rules, or it isn't really a game anymore. So that's where things get a little more complicated in the game domain. But absolutely, there's going to be games where it's just generated on the fly. There's also going to be a whole creator universe as well. If you think of like the Star Trek holodeck, and everyone recalls Star Trek, people went into the holodeck and they would just tell the holodeck, hey, make this kind of thing. They're essentially speaking whole worlds into existence.
Yeah.
So yes, that's going to be a thing too. 100% that will be possible. That said, I don't think that becomes the sum total of game experiences, because so much of the joy of gaming is also the ability is just traversing familiar and shared experiences and storylines. Like, look at any popular game and how people post the videos of like what they've done, and people connect around those shared stories and shared things that they've done and talk about the differences that they had. So I do think
That's
shared
true.
universe, shared experiences, shared storylines, just like us watching, like you could kind of say the same thing but about television, for example. So all television that we watch right now is, at least if it's dramatic, it's scripted television, where a lot of thought and planning was going into that. And what happens around the water cooler, right? We want to talk about what we saw and what we experienced and our thoughts on those characters. You don't have that communal aspect of the experience of entertainment if it's 100% individualized. So I think there's a lot of room for both. So there's room for your own private Idaho in your own experience. There's room for small groups of creators that speak things into existence for themselves or for their friends. And I think there will be the equivalent of a fully scripted experience where someone had a very deliberate intention around how you go through that story and how you progress through it. We'll have all of that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool if you could kind of, I don't know, think up a game and then essentially have AI build it for you so that you and your friends can hang out in the game. I don't know, maybe it's just cool to me because I'm a bit of a nerd.
It raises
I love
the
games.
question, though. It raises, like, then what does that mean from a DePIN standpoint, since we're here to talk about DePIN? So I think that when you talk about generative AI, the critical piece is that actually should not be entirely centralized. Like OpenAI, I'm a big OpenAI user, so I'm not saying any of these things to take away from the incredible things that they have done over at OpenAI. I've got the pro account, research. I'm using the agentic mode. Like, I'm doing all that stuff. But ultimately, we want to push more and more of these capabilities to the edge or even to the end user's device. So the generative AI should be happening locally for you whenever possible. It's really the only economic way to do it. If you think about the fact that a gaming device is essentially a GPU terminal, and then if you're also in the cloud running a GPU, you're saying you need to run a cloud-based GPU and a front-end GPU simultaneously to run most games. I don't think that's the most economic way to do it, especially if you're now adding a whole bunch of AI inference on top of that. So the more we can push to the end user's device, the better. And there's certainly a lot of cases where low latency access to edge GPU is also a way to offload it from the user's device, but get it out of the totally centralized model of an OpenAI or a Claude and whatnot. And we've seen lots of models shift towards open source, open weight models. So it's encouraging there. And frankly, for a lot of the generative applications, you don't need things at the level of what OpenAI is running in ChatGPT, 4.0, for example. Like a lot of the models from a year ago are already great from an LLM perspective if you want to do things like NPC characters and actually run them off of your own
Cool.
device.
Cool. Yeah, I think this is probably a topic for a longer discussion, because I think I heard something very interesting at the weekend, it was at the weekend when I was listening to the All In podcast, and they were talking about what Elon has done with XAI and how he spun up Colossus, and rather than the traditional way of human labeling and that kind of thing, where you could just throw compute at AI to make it better, essentially. And their hypothesis was that XAI was going to considerably outpace the others now because of these Colossus centers that he's building, which is obviously highly centralized. So, I suppose there's a big question for the decentralized side about whether or not we get to, can we bring that kind of level of firepower to the table? But I'd just like to ask you, Michael, about DePIN as an industry, I suppose, given that you're at the hub of it. Is it growing? Like Masari at the start of this year, I think, said that it was going to be worth, I forget the exact numbers, but it was something huge, like in the billions, 350 billion or something like that. Have you noticed, is the growth curve exponential or for you guys, or are we at the stage now where there's...
That's a very hard question to even answer, because growth of what, right? So there's the complexity that, first of all, are you recording revenue on chain? Are you recording revenue off chain? A lot of the off chain revenue isn't super easy to track and trace down. Most of the revenue, though, is occurring off chain. I saw a really interesting report recently by EV3, which people don't know is just like a very deep and thesis driven kind of niche investment fund in the space. And they were basically saying that the real world revenue or the off-chain revenue is the top line revenue, and then what's reported on-chain could almost be like your absolute net, like your bottom line revenue. So there's always going to be a huge delta there. I think with Helium, it's something like 12x difference in size. So it depends on what you're reporting. I mean, I know a year prior, so DePIN had grown year on year from, I believe it was about a 20 billion market cap to 50 billion. So it was like a 2.5x jump in that year period between 2023 and 2024. So that was a really strong year. And then we saw towards the end of mid 2024, things started heating up, right? And things got really hot towards about the end of the year. And then we were just talking about open sourcing AI and all of that. And I think DeepSeek was the first kind of shot that hit a little bit of the US especially, but Western tech industry. And that was the first ripple. And then you saw with Trump coming into power and the Trump coin and all this stuff around meme coins, this major hit, and then meme coins essentially crash. And then you saw just the whole industry kind of crash. So obviously DePIN was heavily affected by that. This altcoin season never really came. Supposedly it's kind of here now. Fingers crossed. But obviously that's affected growth, right? If there's not positive top line kind of growth in crypto, you're not going to also see it filter all the way down to the altcoins. But again, it comes back to the question, are we looking at coin value or are we looking at off-chain revenue? And unfortunately, a lot of that revenue is very hard to track down. It's actually one of the reasons we have our verification program at DePIN Hub. We created this about now 7-8 months ago. And it was based off of feedback we got from the community. We polled them about, hey, what's the feature or service that we don't have right now that you think would be the most beneficial to you? And we got two kind of answers that sort of tied for the top. One was around ROI calculations for figuring out which miners to purchase and what is their payback periods. And the other one is even more subservient, more foundational to that, are which projects to participate in based on are they healthy? Are they safe? Does it have room to grow, et cetera, et cetera. And there was just no way to do it. There was no framework, there's no tool, there's no way to really see that one project could be super legit and then another one could be completely anon with just two guys in a basement. Helium on our platform almost looked the same as a brand new startup, because we give everyone the same type of real estate on the website, right? So unless you really know what you're reading and the data and you're much more familiar with the space, you're not necessarily going to know that Helium is multi-billion-dollar worth company that's sponsoring university sports teams in the US and has partnerships with T-Mobile versus some guy that like just started 2 months ago, right? So we created this whole framework, and one of the main questions we ask is, number one, what is your plan to get to $100 million in revenue? And then number two is, how can we track that? Is it reported on chain? And then number three is, how does some of that value flow back or accrue back to your node holders? And so kind of forcing the projects to think through these things in a bit more detail and state it more eloquently is actually very helpful for us also to assess, like, how deep have they thought about this? Are they just in it to like essentially rug people? Or is this actually what DePIN is supposed to be, which is like a novel approach to the business model itself? It's not necessarily about creating like something completely new. It's about approaching something with a more novel or innovative business model that gives you a major advantage, such as CapEx reduction or ongoing OpEx reduction if it's maintaining a network, that allows you to scale way, way faster than your typical centralized competitor, right? So these are like all part of it, but it's, long story short, I would say right now it's not growing as fast as we thought, but it's very hard to say because, number one, if you go to one website, you'll see 1,000 DePIN projects, 1,000 projects classified as DePIN. Another will say 400. Ours right now, we've only gone through about 200 something because we like to have face-to-face time with every single project we list. So there's also the question of how many of these are even DePINs. So it's really hard to answer, but I would say that right now, I think we're going to see it really start to take off and grow for the next few months. And if we do hit a bear market, maybe at the end of the year or early next year, we're going to see it slow down. We're going to see it slow down. So it's definitely market dependent.
Bob asks, what projects are you most bullish on right now?
Oh, okay. I didn't see there's a way to get questions from the audience. Well, I have to.
Platforms.
Yeah, I don't want to shill everyone that's just here right now, but Beamable, I quite like you guys, and I know that you're doing a node sale coming up, and we're actually eager to help participate in that. So we've done a lot of DD on Beamable, actually, because John and team were forthright enough to actually go through the process, as was Hivelo. So they're actually two projects that we actually are pretty well versed on because we did the DD. And so I really like what you guys are doing at Hivelo because of the ability to aggregate many different DePIN projects at once and reduce the friction to get involved. And then Beamable was actually something I didn't understand much about, John, until you guys kind of explained it to me, because I know nothing about the back end side of game development. But there's obviously a real world problem being solved, and you started in the Web 2 space, and you're still paying attention to the needs of the Web 2 space and not being like completely enamored with like everything's going to be decentralized and we're only going to focus on these. And if you're not forward thinking like we are, like, get out of the way. I like that. So you guys are doing great. I'm waiting for you guys to get verified, and then I'll know more about you guys. We got to get you on the platform. So, doors open, hit us up.
There you go.
But other
sure
than
thing,
that,
sure thing, yeah.
That's
it's
a good growth guy there. You got to pitch in on a podcast.
Yeah. I'm pitching all of you guys. But other than that, I mean, there's actually a lot. I think drone related stuff is very interesting. Whether it's for like anything from the more nefarious around like surveillance to deliveries, like there are a few drone related DePIN projects out there that I think is very interesting. It's essentially a decentralized camera network mixed with a mapping network, mixed with autonomous vehicles. So it's kind of bringing a lot of things together. I think it's very interesting. I think there's a lot of major high paying federal clients that this could be sold to. So that's quite interesting space to watch. I think it's very complex though because of security concerns. I think decentralized, and a bit terrifying. I think decentralized mapping is a really obvious one. So there's Nadix, there's HiveMapper. They have two totally different approaches. One uses primarily your mobile phone as the mapping device. The other one uses a purpose-built piece of hardware. But that's, again, it's like coming back to like what John was talking about really knowing the industry and focusing on Web 2 and the demand side first, instead of a solution chasing a problem, actually finding the problem, knowing the problem, building a solution. I think like what those guys are doing is genius because it's so basic. Like you drive around in your car and sometimes you notice that this map has not been updated. If you look at Street View for 5 years, there was like not even a house there. And now there's a huge house that's been built years ago. The map is just not up to date. And why? Because these vehicles cost $100,000, $500,000 more dollars with all this LiDAR equipment. And you need to actually physically drive around and map every single road. And you can only do that so fast in a centralized approach. If you put 10,000 dash cams on vehicles in a state, you'll have that whole state mapped in a few days, and you can update it constantly. So I think that's also a very smart and novel approach. And one more, so I just don't talk too much. I think what Accurus is doing is really interesting. Decentralized compute and decentralized storage is like a huge space. I mean, this is kind of related to what you guys do at ERD. I think it's super exciting. It's very competitive because there are a lot of projects now kind of in that emerging space, but with the demand for data, for AI models, everything else, like you're hitting a beautiful tailwind. But I like Accurus because what they're doing is they're the only project that I've seen so far that really specializes in using mobile compute, meaning cellular, like your mobile phone's compute capacity, which has a bunch of actually interesting benefits around security and privacy and various things. Of course, you probably need to chain multiple phones together to get more powerful compute, but it's a very interesting and novel approach. And I think they're doing a good job. They just had like a 5.4 million raise on CoinList with the community. So yeah, those are a few, but I'll stop there. I'm bullish on a lot of projects.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Yeah, that drones is a really interesting space. Yeah, I definitely have to look into that more, have a chat about that more. Marcos, just on data and AI, and I suppose data. Like, just talk to us a little bit more about how you guys do it, because I think there is a lot of different ways that you can approach that particular problem, if you want to call it that. I've also heard people say, now I don't actually fully understand the reasoning behind this, but one of our CFO was at an event, and he was saying that one of the venture guys there was like, oh, AI and decentralized AI isn't possible. Basically, was his claim. So I suppose, what would you say to that? And yeah, just maybe talk a little bit about how you guys approach it, because that's obviously you're right in your wheelhouse, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I guess as far as why we are focusing on data or actually high quality data, not many people realize that like the last 2 years, I think almost like 90% of the data out there, it's all derivative of some sort of AI. Like, right. So there's not much, like, how do you say, like actual human, I guess, human labeled data, human verified data. So you're actually kind of running out of it. So that's what you see, like if you're using like your typical ChatGPT and stuff, like hallucinations and stuff. So the demand for data is going to grow. You're going to see, and the only way you can get fresh data is from actual human beings like you and me. The question is, how do you incentivize humans to participate, contribute, and get rewarded for it? So currently in the Web2 space, you got your big boys like Google, Meta. They've been working on, especially like Google, for example. I mean, they've been working on some AI stuff for a long time, and how they collect the data is through the global south. So you have all these third-party companies who do data collection, data labeling. So they do it like in India. Recently, Kenya has been on the news. If you check out this show called 60 Minutes by Barbara something, I forgot her last name, but she has a show 60 Minutes. So she did this kind of like a show on these data contributors in Kenya. And so all these guys, they work in like these rinky-dink kind of like warehouses. They work like 12 hours a day. They get paid like $2 an hour. So think of it as digital slavery. So but they don't but does not come from me. This coming from this actual Kenyan lady. She's very bold, like straight to the point, which I like. I think it's needed, and not many people realize that all this ChatGPT, many of these models, it's all built on human contribution, and unfortunately like they don't get rewarded for this, and of course like the big tech, they're not going to claim they're not they're, I guess with legal mumbo jumbo, they just blame it on the third party partners. These guys, they are committed to human rights violations. For example, Scale AI, I mean, they have big clients like the U.S. Army, so, and other government agencies, but all the data collection, it's all done unfortunately in the global south. So not many people realize that these guys do play an important role. So how Web3 can come in the picture is that these people can get paid in crypto, but also in terms of where the data comes from. In the current space, most of it is kind of like a black box experience. You don't know where the actual data is coming from. I mean, so this is where blockchain can play a role in terms of showcasing, hey, this data is collected by an actual human being, but you don't need to. You can use zero knowledge proof to showcase, hey, it's come from a human being without verifying all these KYC details and stuff. So the idea is that there is a need for some of these companies, for example, Tesla or any autonomous companies, vehicle companies, they need millions of images, and for that you need somebody to go on the screen, do that for almost 10 hours, which is, to be honest, that's kind of insane, because if I barely ever check the screen for maximum 2 hours. After that, I need to take a break. So imagine that. It does create mental health issues too, by the way. So you're doing the manual labeling thing, the bounding boxes. Okay, here's Michael. Okay, he's a white guy from Portugal, American. He's a other guy from America, other guy from UK, brown guy from somewhere else. You have to label it, give some context for the AI to understand some of the stuff and use that to train these AI models. So it's not the most sexiest part of AI. So I think this is where eventually people realize that, oh, okay, this is what's happening. And let me give an example for those who are not in the AI space or the decentralized AI space or in Web3 space. Let's say, for example, I'm sure you guys have used Google Maps, right? Looking for your favorite restaurant in somewhere in New York or Lisbon or here in sunny side Dubai. And I'm sure in an hour or so, you'll get a notification from Google Maps, hey, you've been to this place. Is it 1 star, 5 star? So you post pictures, you put your rating, you write some info. So essentially, what we have been doing, I've been doing data collection and data labeling for Google for free. But Google does all the interesting stuff in the back end. They make it very simple for us to provide that information. So it is. Sure, I guess I know some people might argue it's not really data collection, data labeling, but that's the truth. So, so there is a need for Web3 to play a role in the AI value chain, whether it's storage side of things, whether it is data, validation, and also compute too. So, I guess the real. I know a lot of people, even some executives from your typical traditional companies, they're not big into Web3, is that they don't really understand, or they find it quite risky, or because of lack of education, with what's happening. So anyway, I guess that's my my contention to those who don't know about decentralized AI or have a negative view about it. But then again, there is a famous Nobel Prize winning economist. I can't remember his name. He called an internet, as equivalent to the invention of a toaster. So, and here we are using the internet. Many people said Bitcoin is going to die. There's a website called bitcoinisdead.com. I mean, how many? So I would say the same thing. I think there are some great Web3 companies out there who are solving real problems in the marketplace, whether storage, DePIN, infrastructure, or even also data too. So I guess for us, we're focusing on the data side at the moment, just because I think there are companies out there who do need to get a global verified approach. So Web3, we are globalized, we are all over the place, and instead of depending on the banking system, especially many of our community members in Africa, banking is a pain in the rear. So crypto solves that. So yeah. Anyway, that's my I guess my contention or argument. But John, Michael, please share some insights.
Well, I was just gonna thank you, Neil, for having me on the program. I'm gonna have to head out to another commitment that I've got, but this has been great to hang out with you and Michael and Marcos here. So if anyone's
I was just gonna,
interested,
I was just going to say everybody wants to sign off.
we've got that going at Beamable Network. We're doing an alpha node sale, just 3,000 nodes in a couple of weeks. So encourage everybody to follow Beamable Network and learn more, or go to DePIN Hub, has a lot of information about the project as well. So thanks for having me on.
Thanks, John. Thanks a million for being here. Michael,
John.
do you want to give us your where people can find out a bit more about DePIN Hub, check out projects, etc., find out who they should be bullish on?
Yeah, of course. So it's deepinhub.io. Pretty simple. You can go there, create an account, because if you do, you'll start accruing points for a lot of your interaction and participation in DePIN. So if you like connect socials, you get points. If you purchase miners, you get points. If you add more DePIN hardware to your wallet, if you choose to connect your wallet, you get a bunch of points. With those points, you can unlock access to whitelists. You can get discounts on hardware. You can get all kinds of cool stuff. We're going to really start pushing that this second half of the year, the giveaways and bonuses and perks you get for having the points. So there is another node sale that's going to be very interesting coming down the pipes super soon for a project called Mawari, which, coming back to the original question that I was asked, was another project I'm quite bullish on, which is a decentralized content delivery network specializing in mixed reality or three-dimensional content. Super cool. They have multiple patents. It's like huge name clients already, like Disney World, BMW, and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, you can win up to 20 of those nodes through our points. So go to deepinhub.io, set that up. You can find out a bunch about Hivelo, a bunch about Beamable. I just did a video recap about Beamable related to our newsletter we came out with a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
We did a newsletter about it. And Ert, I gotta, get your guys set up there so I can start writing cool content about you and doing videos
Coming
and stuff
to
as well.
DePIN Hub soon.
Yeah, sure thing. It sounds like a plan. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, down for it, man.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Come here. You'll have to ask those people to come on the show. Come on, DePIN Coffee Hour, and talk about what they're doing. Seriously.
Oh, and thank you, Neil, by the way. Thank you for hosting this and having us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. Marcos, you want to sign off? Anything else you want people to know? Links?
No, sure. Before we bounce out, hey guys, we do have our Oat wallet. So if you want to learn a little bit about, Oat Data Hub, that's our Web3 platform on all things, data collection, and eventually we'll have like data labeling. So you can go on Google Store or Apple Store. You can download the wallet, and from there you can access our Data Hub. And we do have a couple of tasks for people all over, anywhere around the world. Participate, get the, fulfill those tasks, and you get rewarded in ORT. And we also have, if you level up, you get also access to USDT as well for some of the advanced tasks. So it's a great way to make I guess kind of like a secondary income, especially if you're coming from the global south. So you get to see like how Web3 and AI plays a role. So yeah.
I actually, in preparation for today, I went on last night and downloaded it onto my iPhone. And yeah, I have to say it was a lot easier when I searched for ORT on App Store than it was when I searched for it on Google. Because when I went and did a Google search, that's a tough lift for an SEO. Let me tell you, there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff about space and ORT clouds and which I assume was part of the inspiration. Yeah,
that is true. Yeah. The founders, Dr. Max and Dr. Yang, they're big into space, so that's where the ORT comes from. So
I figured. Yeah. It's usually the link.
Awesome. Neil, thank you so much for hosting us.
Yeah, listen, totally guys, thank you. Yeah, listen, thank you guys so much for being here. And obviously a huge thank you to our audience as well who've tuned in. We're over actually 10,500 viewers at the moment, which is great. So this show should be a good one. Huge thank you to all of you tuning in. And just if you haven't as of yet downloaded and run a Hivelo node, why not give it a try? We're in beta at the moment. You're not going to make $1 million by next week, but you can certainly participate in one of the DePIN projects that I feel like is going to be a huge Yeah, it's going to be a huge player in the future of DePIN. We aggregate a lot of the different DePIN networks so that you don't have to try and figure out which networks are the best ones to run on your machine. Our AI and our own data lake will just optimize that whole thing for you. So it's a super, super simple process. You just install it, a couple of clicks, like installing Spotify on a Windows machine, I should add, because Spotify on Apple sucks. I digress. But any case, yeah, give it a try. Havelo.com, super, super simple to install and use. And actually, you just have to set it up. You don't have to do anything after that, really. So again, huge thank you, guys. Thanks to everybody. And until next week, take it easy.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Ciao.